Hey guys, it's Zack Childress here. I'm back with another Whiteboard Monday, and I got some cool stuff. If you saw the last one, we're going to really be digging into this month about kind of knowing the difference between some, quick flips and cash flow, and some of the questions that we had actually this weekend at my boot camp up in Chicago. And if you missed that, you missed a really good event. And for those of you watching that did come, I was excited to get to know all of you, and I was glad for all the aha moments and really your kind of insight on how we do our events where other people do theirs and how much different ours was. I got so much great feedback from you guys. I just really appreciate you guys coming, learning, hanging out, having a good time, and kind of looking at what you had a few questions with. And so I wanted to relate those with the Whiteboard Monday. And so what I did determine over the weekend was that some of you may have more challenges like trying to decipher between really running the numbers on what we call a quick flip and running the numbers based on what we call a cash flow deal. And it wasn't so much that you might have not know how to run the numbers to see if you're going to create cash flow, but it was really about, as a wholesaler, how do we run numbers to know where we should be flipping at and what price point is going to be good. So obviously if we're going to run the numbers as a quick flip, it's going to be based on profits, and we're going to go through that. But some of the other ones is running the numbers on cash flow, because when we sell cash flow properties to other landlords in the market, we don't really present the deal to them as how much profit they're going to make on the deal as if we would on a quick flip, but we really present the deal to them as if how much of their return is going to be. So what level of return are they at, and what does that return look like? So in the essence of the difference between a quick flip and a cash flow deal is, we're on a quick flip, we're really trying to justify our offer by sharing with them the ARV. So in this one, it's really more about the ARV, because we want them to know that the ARV is there and that ARV could show them what they could sell it for, because underneath that ARV is going to be their profits, right? Where inside the cash flow one, what we have to spend time on is getting them to understand what their return is, and what defines that return is the cash flow. So that's really the two major differences, and so I'm going to walk you through what that looks like, okay? So let's look at a quick flip first, and then we'll come back to the cash flow, because I want to make sure you guys understand the difference in the two. So on a quick flip, we know that we have to know what the ARV is. Like, that is a defined point that we need to know. So we're just going to use an example of a $100,000 house. So if the ARV is $100,000 in this area, as a wholesaler, we have to start determining how we can run that number so that not only can we make money, but can our investor make money too. And so obviously if we're going to find ARV, we need 3 sold comps, okay? And those 3 sold comps you could do really easily. If you watch the Zillow training, I showed you how to kind of drill down in there and kind of pick some certain things out there and how to find some good deals in there as well. But we take that ARV. Once we know that ARV, now there's obviously a lot inside of each one, like appraisal fees, things like that. But we're going to use a very quick math for you guys to be able to run your numbers pretty efficiently. So then what we do is we have to minus what's called resale fees, and so that's going to typically be about 8%. Now, why is it 8%? Well, the reason it's 8% is because if you're wholesaling to a rehabber, and that rehabber is going to buy that house and sell that house, he's typically, or she's typically, got about 6% in real estate commissions. Plus there's closing fees and some other factors that may fall into it. So if what we're saying is 6% of this is going to be in the commission fees, and then you've got that little 2% there that's going to help you with the closing fees and maybe any extra that might come across. So we know that that's $8,000. So what we have now is we have $92,000. Then what we have to do is we have to subtract the rehab. Okay? So when we get to the rehab, the rehab is going to be based on what needs to be done to that property. And so if you're out looking at stuff and you're getting a really good idea of what things cost in your neighborhood, well, then you're going to be able to walk through it and probably have a really good idea if that's going to be a $15,000 remodel, a $20,000 remodel, to get it back up to market conditions to get your ARV. Now, if let's say it's in a virtual market and you're not there but you're wholesaling that market, well, you need to get really good at maybe understanding the prices in those markets as well as the prices in your market, because at the end of the day what all this comes down to is it comes down to what we know as square foot times what we call remodel square foot price. Okay, so we need to know what the remodel square foot price is, and the only way to know what the remodel square foot price is to get an idea of what it would cost to remodel a house and then to divide that by the square footage, and then we get a remodel square foot price. And depending on where you are, that number could be anywhere from $10 a square foot to as much as $30 a square foot. It would just be simply based on where you are in your market. Like I know in our market, we can go in and remodel a house sometimes as low as $12 a square foot. But if it's depending on the size of the house, it could be as much as $16, $17, even $18 a square foot. And so it just depends on the house, the location. Are we doing laminate or are we doing hardwood, so forth. So it'll adjust that square foot number. And the reason that number is important because it allows you to be able to run what an estimate remodel cost would be on a house without seeing it or actually even going to that market. So let's assume that this property is, let's say it's 1,500 square feet, okay? And that's going to be the square footage of the property, and we're going to run with, let's say, $15 a square foot. That wasn't very nice, was it? So we're going to go with $15 a square foot. So to calculate our remodel, we would just get our calculator out or your phone, whatever you're using, and we would just simply put in the math. We would say, okay, well, the house has 1,500 square feet, and I think I can get it done for $15 a square foot. So that's going to put us at about $22,000 in the remodel, okay? So then now we have our math from our resale to our rehab, and then what we have is, now we have to take out what's called profits, right? So what do I want to make on that house? Well, I want to make $15,000, okay? All right, so we take the math. Obviously, we're at 65. Take that away, we're at 55,000 right now. Now, maybe I could have done the remodel cheaper, which would have allowed me to make a better offer, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the other thing is when you're running it this way, like if you have appraisal fees or junk fees or any other types of fees, they would go into the rehab, okay? You would keep adding those in here if you think there was going to be more fees associated with that deal. Now, the idea is we have $55,000. So if you're going to sell this to a cash buyer, your cash buyer, if they paid $55,000 for this house, they would make $15,000 if that cash buyer is okay with that. That's what he would make. That would be his rehab. That would be his resale fees, which would bring him to $100,000. But as a wholesaler, you still have to make capital, right? You have to make what's called an assignment fee. So what we have to do now is we have to minus our assignment fee, right? What do we want to make on this deal? Now, if you just say, oh, well, I want to make 10 grand on every deal, well, you can see right here, that would be a little far stretch, right? Because if I put 10 grand in here, it put me at 45,000, which means I'm 45% of the ARV. Now, where that would be different is if the ARV was higher than the listing price, right? So if the listing price on this property was $60,000 and I'm offering $45,000, I'm not even 50% yet. You understand what I'm saying? So it could make a variance. So I'm going to say we want to make $5,000. So what happens now is I end up at $50,000, which is what we call a max offer price. That is what we call that. So I say, okay, well, this is a $50,000. I got to be below $50,000 for me to make $5,000, for my investor to make $15,000 and cover all his fees. Now the beauty of that is if the ARV, like I said, is $100,000, but the listing price on this is only, say, $60,000, then I'm only $10,000 below the listing price, right? So it allows me to make a very good educated decision on how I can do this and still get it to a price of what my investor will pay. Now here's what you also have to be careful about. Whatever you bring, because this is right here's what we're bringing it to the investor for. We're bringing it to the investor for $55,000 because we're going to make $5 on it. But now, if the price point to the investor is equal or greater than what it was listed for, well then it's no good, right? Unless this is what? A for sale by owner deal, because then it's not listed. It doesn't matter what this price point, if this price point is equal to or greater than, right? So, all right. And then we end up with what's called a profit earning, because the profit earning on the deal is what your investor looks for in what we call a quick flip, okay? It's all about the profits for them on this one. Now, what I want to do now is I want to show you how we run a cash flow deal to determine what the investor will pay, okay? So let's do that. All right, so on a cash flow deal, we have to determine a few things. You know, a couple of things that we need to understand on a cash flow deal, which this is the one we're going to be talking about right now. Cash flow deal, okay? Is we need to know what the rents are. What's the rents in the area, okay? Then also, we need to know what the ARV would be in the area, okay? What's the property really worth in the area? We know what it's worth in the area, and then we know what the rents are. We can start moving along, right? So if we know what the rents are in the area, and if the rents are, let's say, $1,000, then what we know is that $1,000 is what can be made on that property. Then we can start calculating to kind of get a better idea of what price point someone wants for the property. So, because the ARV can obviously be different than what they want for it. So, let's say the ARV on this property is $100,000. And the asking, so we'll put asking right here, the asking price on this property is $90,000. Okay, or let's use $80,000. Is $80,000. Let me get my calculator out, because we'll need this. So, I got to do a couple of maths here. I got to start determining, one, what is my cash on cash return, okay? Because that's really what I got to define. Cash on cash return. I got to figure out what that is. So first thing I need to do is I need to determine what my NOI is. So I take 1,000 and I multiply that by 12, which equals $12,000, okay? Once I know what that $12,000 is, now I got to subtract fees, right? Because you're going to have management fees of 10%, you have vacancies of 10%, you have maintenance of about 5%, so you're roughly around 25%. So what I would do is I'd say, okay, well I want to take 25% off of 12, so I know I need to minus my 25%, which equals $9,000. Now that is my net operating income on that rental property, okay? Once I know what that is, I say, okay, well it's $9,000. And then I have to determine what the purchase price is, okay? So now what we're going to do is, and we're looking at this from a cash investment, okay? So if I know it's listed for $80,000, well I'm going to see real quick if $80,000 is even a deal. So how I do that is I have to create what's called cash on cash return, which equals, we take our hold on, let me get my calculator. We do the math and we say, okay, so let me see what my cash on cash return is here. And what we do is we have to take NOI and we have to divide that by, so take NOI, we divide that by our cash invested, okay, which gives us an 11%. Now, what is this? We already know what the NOI is, right? So the NOI is what? It's the monthly rents times 12 minus our 25%, which is vacancy, management, and maintenance. Our cash invested is what we pay for it, meaning as the investor. What is the investor going to pay for the property? That's your cash invested. Okay, so if your investor bought this property for $80,000 with a rents of $1,000 with 10% vacancy, they would have a cash on cash of 11% on that deal. It's not a great deal, is it? It's okay deal, but it's not a great deal. So what we would do is we would say, okay, well, if I need to get this to my investor for a better price than that, then where can I be at? Well, I need to get it lower than that, obviously. So if it's an 11% there, anything lower than that's going to be a better deal. So I say, well, what if I was able to get it for 65 and sell it to them for 70, right? Because 65 would be my assignment fee. So then all we would do is we would now take NOI plus cash invested. So we would do the same math, NOI divided by cash invested of the 70,000, okay? So then we just do the math. It's really easy. So I take my NOI, 9,000, I divide that by my cash invested of my new one. Remember up here, I went with what they had it listed for. So then I divide that by 70, and now I'm at a 13% cash on cash return. You follow me? So now it's getting better for them. So I know that if I can get this property for $70,000, well, guess what? They're now at a 13% cash on cash return. So it means that my offer on this property would start at $65,000. Because if I can get my investor over 12%, that's typically what I look for. Because on average, they're going to get, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, and 11s, from any agent out there. Well, if I can get them over 12, then I can say, look, this deal is over 12%. It's at 13% cash on cash return. That's a good deal. That's a deal and a half right there. Now, there's another thing you got to consider is what if they were going to finance this deal? What happens then? Well, we have to then determine what's called debt services to be able to factor all this in, and then their cash investment is less, right? So let's use this $80,000 number again, okay? So now we're gonna separate this. So I know that my yearly NOI, so my yearly cash flow on this is $9,000. But now I have to subtract debt services. Okay, so if I brought this to my investor for $80,000, and my investor is going to put roughly 20% down on the deal, well, I now have to calculate what his debt services would be on what? You got to take $16,000 off of 80, you're at what? $64,000. So typical investors in our area are going to get between 5 and 6% on an investment property that they put 20% down. So I'm going to take $64,000. I'm going to multiply that by 6%. That's going to give me $3,800 a year, $3,840 a year in their interest payments. But what I want to do is I'm going to bump it up, because this isn't going to be absolute, because unless you have a mortgage calculator. So I'm going to say it's $4,000 instead of $3,800. So that's going to be my debt services, which is going to leave me with a $5,000 a year net operating income. Okay, so now I know what my new net operating income is. So I can come down here and I can say a cash on cash return is going to be my net operating income, which is $5,000, divided by cash invested. So if if the investor is going to buy this at $80,000 and they're putting 20% down, what's their cash invested? $16,000, right? That's how much they have invested in the deal, because they're putting 20% down. So we do the math, divided by 16,000 gives me a 31% cash on cash return, estimated, right? Estimated. We say we think you can make as much as 31% on this deal, right? Based on our numbers. Now, if they had to put $5,000 into this deal to get it rent ready, would their cash invested be 16 anymore? No, it would be 21, right? It would be 21,000, which would alter that number. So at the end of all this, as you're able to run these numbers, what you got to understand is in this deal, this right here is what we are selling all the time. We're selling the returns. Nothing else other than the returns. That's what we're selling. Because if we can get that investor a deal at that price with that return, and it's still below the ARV, right? Meaning that whatever we can negotiate as a sell price, and whatever the ARV is, as long as it's less than that, and the return is suitable for that investor, then we've got a deal. So at $80,000, I could take this down for $75 and get it to my investor for $80, and he's got a deal. Now, obviously, if that was listed on the market, same scenario. If this was a listing and it was listed at $80,000, and I'm bringing it to my investor for $80,000 because I negotiated $75, it's not a deal for them because they could go find it on the MLS themselves. So in this scenario, I could do this easily with a for sale by owner. But if this was a listed property that I was doing this with, I would obviously need to get it lower than that. I would have to get this deal at around $70,000. The reason being is because then I would bump it up $75,000 for my investor so that I can make $5,000 and my investor would be getting a deal cheaper than what it was on the MLS. So guys, I hope you get this. Now obviously we went through cash flow analysis and quick flip analysis. I want you to pay attention to this, run some numbers yourself, go find some deals, run them yourself, and then put them together. Now the other side is when you start running deals, numbers like this on houses that are like $30,000, $20,000, $40,000, these numbers go extraordinarily high. So if you have an opportunity and you're in a market where houses are between $20,000 and $40,000 or cheaper, your landlords know that, and when we're selling the return is what we're selling. Now think of this. Let's say I'm in a bad market and this is a 25%, and what did I put in there? I put a 10% vacancy rate. But if I'm going after a $20,000 house that rents for $500, could I bump that vacancy rate up to say 20%? Yeah, maybe even 25%. So when I'm running my net operating income, I would just say if I added 20% as a vacancy, I would take the 20, the 30 for management, and then the 5 for maintenance. And what I would have there is I would have 35% in that scenario. So just make sure you run these based on locations. But man, some of these cheaper houses, you can lock these down in those neighborhoods because they're cheap. They rent a lot higher than what you pay for them, and landlords love them because of the return. If you can show a landlord a 30% return, they know they're going to get their money back in typically 3 to 4 years. That's a smoking deal. So anyways, Whiteboard Monday. I hope you've enjoyed this. One announcement for you. I do have my bus tour. It's really not a bus tour. It's more about 3 days in the field immersion with me here in Huntsville. I don't know, I think we have roughly like 2 or 3 openings. I think we're going to have about 15 people here. Really small. I want them small so that I can show you guys. I got like 5 rehabs going on right now. So when you come in at the end of the month here, it's like 3.5 weeks away. I'm actually going to show you how we run that business model. I'm going to show you how we find these deals, how we run these numbers, how we calculate everything, our cost of stuff, our systems for things, our marketing strategies, all that stuff. And then I'm actually going to take you out into the field. And I'm going to show you these rehabs I'm working on so that you can see firsthand what it looks like. Not just from theory and somebody telling you what you could do, but firsthand so you can actually come and see me. We're doing this one. We're not doing another one for I think another 6 months or somewhere around there. But check it out. Just go to realestatemasterinvestor.com. Go over there, hear Ian's story. You'll probably enjoy that, and then turn in an application for it. All right. Zack Childress signing off. Whiteboard Monday. I'll see you next week. Bye bye now.